My name is Dr. Rebecca Lloyd, and I'm working with Stephen Smith, Dr. Stephen Smith, out at Simon Fraser University. And he's very much part of the planning for what we're doing in this project. The big thing in this project is making a difference in the lives of the everyday person experiencing movement, so that we could trouble this individual focus. So when we think about becoming physically literate, for example, it's like the individual developing movement competence and confidence. Well, maybe it's not just about the individual. Maybe it's about relationship. And if we just shift from this, how am I doing, to how are we? That's a real shift in our teaching practice. We're seeing a change in our curriculum. So our curriculum's infusing this relational connection with social emotional learning skills. But we're not yet there in terms of understanding it in and through the movements themselves. We wanted to look at experts, first of all, in phase one of the project. So Tai Chi, martial arts, not just the solo martial art, but martial art, Tai Chi, when you have that push hands, when you have that connection.
We're usually familiar with Tai Chi as a kind of solo movement, the groups of people practicing in the parks in Shanghai and so on. And this is a big part of the training, the solo practice. At the same time, Tai Chi is a solo and partner practice. As I move and as I perform the written gestures or the improvised gestures, I'm always doing it from the base, from having the legs and the waist in tune. Everything comes out of there. At the same time, when we're practicing Tai Chi, we should have the idea of some kind of connection. It's a little difficult in the beginning to do this with solo movement, but when I start to engage with a partner, I get more and more the idea of what this means, and I can bring it back into my solo practice.
Phase one of the Interactive for Life project, we are really curious to learn how relational activities, what we call partner activities, how they communicate in and through movement. So if you're doing salsa, for example, you're not going to say, hey, right turn, left turn. A leader is going to cue that, and the follower will have a sense of feeling that invitation through the pressure.
So connection, even as a leader and follower, so many different things. So for me, connection could be in the touch, and I could convey a specific message depending on how I touch. Depending on how I touch myself, if my body language is related to the other person, I'm giving off a message. So I think first and foremost, whoever is going to communicate needs to understand the power of their own body language.
We need to be moving with the horse like it's your dance partner. You know, if I just take off and I'm half a revolution ahead of you, we're going to be in for disaster, right? But if we're doing a spin together and we're in time, it becomes easy and effortless. That connection you have in dance is very much what we're looking for, even in the connection in the horse. Is I'd like her to be able to move around and just relax. Relational flow. I find when we're dealing with horses, it's one of the most difficult concepts to explain to people because it's something that they have to experience.
When you're working with a horse, for example, we saw that expert, Paul Dufresne, he was able to subtly turn his shoulders or hips, and what happened was the horse would do these wonderful patterns, move from a figure eight to a circle. And this whole connection that he was able to create through that space, it was like the horse was highly sensitized to those subtle angles and gestures. And when you think about the nature of a horse, like they're easily startled. He had to be so calm, because that's the goal, is to continually look for the head down cue in a horse. That means the horse is calm. And leading in that example wasn't just like, here's my pattern, I'm going to run it. It was leading in terms of where's that horse and how is the horse responding. Same in acro yoga. We saw Jesse and Eugene do these fabulous partner poses. And it wasn't like a showing off bravado. It was a sense of, how do we breathe together? How do we make that eye contact? How do we feel that we're there for each other? And then when they were communicating, it's a whole language of creating this active reactive dance to be supportive.
The eyes are connection, but the thing that helps us move from one move to the other is the breath and the sensation in the body. The sensation of the foundation, the sensation of whatever's touching each other, how we
Point of contact.
how we manipulate that gives us the sense of where we're going. If I'm doing a move with Jesse and I start to do a twist, so feel the sensation of my body moving one way, and we'll just follow that. And I'll follow where she's going to put her foundation, and I'll move into that foundation. Once I move into that foundation, then we could take it to another place.
For me, it's all about reciprocity. So I wait, I wait.
Yes.
I wait, I breathe, I look, I feel where the weight is, and I go in the opposite direction. So if I want to stay in a stack, then we take that breath, we take that eye contact, Eugene starts his twist, and I start to modify my position to reciprocate to his position. He senses me doing that through his body consciousness and body awareness. We take another breath, we hook up the eyes again. I understand that he's doing a sweeping motion with his front arm, so the body will follow. I have to stay attuned and alert to that because I know I have to move the other way, otherwise we're going to fall off our midline. There's a constant negotiation of eyes, breath, and corporal implication and intention all the time. So you take your breath, you find your foundation, which is what's touching the ground right now, and then you make your movement.
We recognize that physical education teachers, they might not have the accessibility to try acro yoga or maybe they've never taken a salsa lesson. Maybe they've never done Tai Chi or work with a horse. So we didn't want to keep that knowledge in the expert realm. And so when we had this phase 2, taking this expert knowledge from phase 1 and working with Annika and Christina, first of all, one of our goals was to just find generalist exercises and experiences. So partner to partner squat or a partner push-up. The handstand was a challenge, so we wouldn't necessarily start with that one, but we wanted to get a sense of, might not be acro yoga where I'm flying in the air, but I'm still experiencing the principles of that relational connection. And when we started to explore, well, how do we add locomotion, and we did the mirror in walk, that was like that salsa connection. And Anya spoke a little bit about how you say yes to the partner is that leaning in. That means I'm trusting, I'm giving myself to the dance, to this moment. But say you have a partner who's too aggressive or forcing a turn, you don't have to commit. Like, some people forget that there's agency in following. So following doesn't mean I'm just going to do what I'm told, like Simon says. When you're really connecting, you understand that there's a responsiveness where you're giving of yourself and you have that feel of how much to give versus when to pull back. Because sometimes it's strategic to lean back. So when we were playing the walk the line game, we saw that, yeah, you could score a point by maybe pushing, but you could also score a point by softening. And that's what's experienced in a dancing relationship is if your shoulder's sore, just like when we did the partner push-up, just softening can really take off that pressure that you don't need. And sometimes we forget about how a relationship can build that body awareness. And the last thing we did was take it up a notch to those faster games where we started, with the connection in the squat, the push-up. We then had a ball where we were, walking with something we were pressing into or the contact pressing into each other. But eventually we did mirror cone touch or fake out, race out, where we wanted to feel that connection, but through a distance. And that takes a while to develop. What we're doing through the function form, feeling, flow framework is to really create a progression that we can start with that readiness. Am I here? Am I comfortable looking at my partner? And if I'm a teacher, I might pick up on those cues and say, okay, well, step one, let's just focus on becoming comfortable with my partner, or maybe switching a partner, or having a wall as a partner. Because even that's a relational connection, and that's step one. And sometimes we forget about the importance of just looking at that initial sign of connection. And then step two is, okay, so now we're ready. What beautiful things are going to happen from there? And when we get into that feeling of form, you know, if my shoulder moves here, well, there's a counter movement, just like we did in the acro yoga. There's always an action reaction. And if we can make it like a game, you know, like Guess the Leader that we did towards the end, it gets fun. It's not like, you know, you cued too fast or you turned too quickly. It's that sense of how do we learn in a way where we're experiencing that good feeling, that we're saying yes to that moment, that we start to feel that, hey, this is fun, I can lead, I can follow. And then once we get that good vibe, we could take that into a number of possibilities and even games and sports. So I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone who's been involved in this project. And I really hope that we can continue in terms of creating more resources, getting more feedback, and helping more people become interactive for life.